Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
Is the US dollar losing its reserve currency status?
Ground news. For the best part of a century, the US dollar has been the world's dominant reserve currency. Despite recurring talks of de-dollarization, the dollar's share of global reserves has remained relatively steady for decades, and US treasuries are the backbone of the global financial system. However, Trump and his team seem set on testing the dollar's dominance to its limits, borrowing more and more money, and apparently even flirting with a so-called reprofiling or outright default. So in this video, we're going to take another look at
What?
flirting with a so-called reprofiling or outright default. So
You want a default on the debt? Is that what you said?
reprofiling and
I
default.
don't know what reprofiling is, but default? What?
in this video, we're going to take another look at the US dollar and why some people think its status as the world's reserve currency could finally be coming to an end. Who's more influential, Trump or Waltz? Find out. So, to understand this story, you need to understand the central role that the US dollar plays as the world's so-called reserve currency. Technically, a reserve currency is just that, a currency that central banks and other big financial institutions like to hold in their foreign exchange reserves. This is usually because these currencies are considered particularly safe, in that their value will remain relatively stable and that they can reliably be used to buy other things. There have been various different reserve currencies throughout history. In the 19th century, for instance, the pound was arguably the world's reserve currency, but since at least the end of World War II, the US dollar has been the world's dominant reserve currency, accounting for more than half of all reserves. The dollar's reserve status has its
It is decreasing though if you look at
dominant
the
reserve
chart.
currency, accounting
Like it was closer to 80%, like around 70%. Now we're like around 60%.
for more than half of all reserves. The dollar's reserve status has its origins in the Bretton Woods system, which was negotiated after World War II and lasted until the so-called Nixon shock in the early 1970s. After the war, the Americans decided they wanted the dollar to be the center of the new international monetary order, and so demanded that the dollar be the only currency that could be directly converted into gold, with all other major currencies then pegged to the dollar at fixed exchange rates. This is what originally made the dollar the world's most popular reserve currency, but its status persisted after then President Richard Nixon ditched the gold standard in the early 1970s, because by then the dollar was already established as a popular global currency, and the US was the biggest economy in the world. Today, this is still the case, and about half of all international transactions, including the majority of oil and commodity purchases, are denominated in dollars. Unsurprisingly, this means that dollars are accepted as legitimate currency basically everywhere, which is why people usually want dollars in times of crisis. Now, one of the key things to understand here is that the dollar's reserve status is today intimately tied up with the role that US government bonds, otherwise known as treasuries, play in the global financial system. Basically, in sort of the same way that the dollar is the world's favourite reserve currency, treasuries are the world's favourite form of debt. Not only does this allow the federal government to borrow tons of money, it also means that treasuries are essentially the basis of the entire global financial system. So if the treasury market breaks, everything else breaks as well. However, over the past few years, we've seen more and more talk of de-dollarization. In other words, the erosion of the dollar's reserve status. To speak plainly, most of this talk has been nonsense. Every so often, you see a headline about a new BRICS currency, or some middle power like the Saudis or Brazil moving to ditch the dollar. But these headlines have been popping up
Is that why it's popular with the cryptocurrency and its future?
Well, cryptocurrency, yeah, is popular because people don't want to be dependent on the dollar. But it's more so not even about the dollar per se. It's more about decentralizing financial system. So like they don't want to be dependent on the banks, because with crypto there isn't like a like a central like organization or something that your money has to go through. You like literally, it's like cash. You're holding your money in your wallet basically.
So how do you create value in cryptocurrency? Like
That's
where,
what people are valuing. It's like one Bitcoin. That's what they're valuing that Bitcoin to be at that time. It's like it's similar to these currencies, like what euro convert to dollar. It's what crypto convert to Bitcoin convert to dollar. It's similar principle, but the idea is like each Bitcoin you keep it in your wallet. So like in your pocket, you can actually have like a physical wallet, to
so
carry
you
with
can
you.
lose all possible.
If you forget where you placed it, somebody steals it. Yes, it's there's no guarantee about it. It's like it's cash, essentially. So and yeah, if you forget the passcode, it's gone. So yeah, it's like cash in that sense. So it's all on you, but there's no risk that some like the government is gonna take it from you or stuff like that. So that's why people it's like libertarian type of money, where it's like very anti-government.
But to get this cryptocurrency, you have to give them your
You have to
dollars.
give them your government money. Yes, you have to give them your government money.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That's the funny part about it. Yes.
Intermittently since literally the 70s, and they're almost always hot air, which is why the dollar's share of reserves has remained relatively steady for the past few decades. Nonetheless, in the past few months or so, there's been some more substantive anxiety that Trump's policies could actually erode the dollar's reserve status. And the fact the dollar declined at the same time as the stock markets earlier this month will have provoked some anxiety in the Treasury. This doesn't usually happen. In fact, during stock market corrections, the dollar normally surges as investors look to it as a safe asset. Similarly, the concurrent rise in gold also suggests that the market no longer see the dollar as quite the safe haven asset it used to be. So, what's apparently eroding the dollar's reserve status? Well, there are at least 5 possible
Wow.
reasons. First, America's economy is flirting
I never seen that burning $100.
That's someone rich.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
with recession, as Trump's unpredictable tariff regime shakes business and consumer confidence.
He loves
Second,
showing that
Trump
signature.
and his
huh?
team have
I
said
think
they
that's
want to
common
somehow
practice, no?
devalue
Oh, it
the
is?
dollar.
I think so.
Honestly,
Because after you sign it, you show everybody. That's what I would think.
I only seen Trump do that.
America reindustrialize, which has understandably spooked dollar holders. Although how Trump squares this with
Probably
his
fake
insistence
money,
that
ain't
the dollar
nobody
remains the
burning
world's
gold money.
reserve currency is unclear. Third, Trump's antagonistic attitude to America's long-standing allies. One of the reasons that the dollar is the world's reserve currency is that countries generally feel more comfortable holding their allies' assets. As a Fed staffer paper concluded, around 3/4 of foreign government holdings of safe US assets are by countries with some military tie to the US. As Trump withdraws those military guarantees, these countries will probably de-dollarize to an extent. Fourth, Trump's enthusiasm for sanctions.
Interesting.
Are you sure your tax expert is right for you? Switch to TurboTax Full Service. You'll be
That excessive use of sanctions could pose to the dollar's reserve status. After all, people don't want to hold dollars if they think that the US could just seize them on a whim. Now that he's in office, he's already proven
Right, that's could just seize them on a whim. That's kind of the principle of Bitcoin too, like that the government could just seize your dollars on a whim.
pretty keen on them, whacking fresh sanctions on
I mean, it would be interesting to make Bitcoin as centralized currency, but I don't think that's realistic. Because the governments like to have control. With Bitcoin, there's no control. I think that's why it wouldn't happen.
Venezuela, Iran, and China. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, the US is issuing obscene amounts of debt. The US was already running a pretty enormous deficit when Trump came in, but his program of tax cuts, plus the fact that Doge now looks unlikely to make a dent in the federal budget, means that the deficit will probably increase in the near future. This has sparked some anxiety about the possibility of the US just defaulting on its massive debt pile, which would ruin confidence in both treasuries and the dollar. Things haven't been helped here by recent reports that Trump's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and his chair of the Council of Economic Advisers Stephen Moran are considering bullying foreign investors into accepting a so-called reprofiling of their Treasury holdings. In other words, the US could tell countries like Japan, we won't protect you anymore unless you accept a delay in the payments on the money you lent us. There's even been some talk of converting foreign treasuries into so-called perpetual bonds. In other words, bonds with no set date for repayment. Obviously, this would massively undermine investor confidence in treasuries. Now, the big caveat here is that, well, for the dollar to lose its status as the world's reserve currency, something else needs to replace it. This has always been the issue for de-dollarization advocates. There's no obvious alternative, and it's hard to
Euro is pretty obvious to me. I would say either euro or Chinese yuan. I mean, two currencies that come to mind.
see one emerging anytime soon. In related news, this story about Bessent
And that's where we stop.
Can I see the comments?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the story with the man who used his Bitcoin to buy pizza. Why did he do that?
As he couldn't predict the future. That
But his intention was
to use Bitcoin as a money. That is idea that Bitcoin is intended to be used as money to purchase goods.
He just did it at the wrong time.
He purchased good at the wrong time with the
He wanted
Bitcoin.
to use it. I
Yeah,
see.
that he did Bitcoin. He used Bitcoin for what it's supposed to. Bitcoin
Really
is not
slow.
it's not an investment asset like a stock. It's a
Yeah.
cash.
I see.
You have
Okay.
it to buy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the pizza place accepted Bitcoin. He bought it.
I'm surprised the pizza place accepted this form of currency.
They were ahead of their time. Now,
Time
if they
to say,
saved that
why
money,
not? Yeah.
now they got a lot of money.
Yeah.
Trump has absolutely no understanding of soft power. I don't know if he's killed it yet, but he's certainly trying his best. I see promises made, promises kept.
Everyone's making jokes. This is real life.
In order to get manufacturing jobs back in the USD, has to be worthless. Did the Americans actually want that? Probably not, but they sure as hell voted for it. A little over 70 days, the damage, amazing. Well, he did bankrupt a casino multiple times. What makes you think he can't do this for the whole United States?
How funny.
Uh,
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible. Bye, guys.